Hello, it's Tessa, one of the news editors here at Manx Radio. It's Monday the 20th of November and the start of the Isle of Man's first Children and Adults Safeguarding Week. The event gives professionals and the public the opportunity to learn more about the services and support available on the island. And the message from police today: ensuring children and vulnerable adults are safeguarded from harm is everyone's business. In this episode, we're going to look at what the island is doing to safeguard people. A warning, however, this episode contains information which some listeners may find distressing. The first person you're going to hear from is Inspector Samuel Cannell. He works in the Protecting Vulnerable People team and working with other agencies through the Multi-Agency Safeguarding Hub, or MASH, endeavours to keep people safe from harm.
In its simplest form, safeguarding is protecting people from harm. So whether that's physical or emotional, whether it be sexual, financial or even neglect, it's collectively putting measures in place to make sure that that person is safe. A lot of the times we talk about children and we talk about vulnerable adults. And when we talk about vulnerability, what we're talking about really is someone who is in a situation by virtue of circumstances or otherwise where they effectively can't take care of themselves or protect themselves or others from harm or even exploitation. So this week is around raising issues, and part and parcel of that is around talking to you today to hopefully raise the profile of aspects around safeguarding, because ultimately as a society on the Isle of Man, safeguarding is everyone's business. Everybody's got a duty to look after each other and put an arm around their shoulder, and that effectively is what safeguarding is.
When we talk about children's safeguarding, what are we specifically looking at versus when we are looking at safeguarding of adults?
Children are vulnerable because by and large, due to their age, they're unable to look after themselves. Obviously, as they grow up, they become more able to do that. So children really are the most vulnerable within our society, and they have a right to thrive. They have a right to progress and be nurtured and be successful in their life. And so from a policing point of view, we work with our partners in social care and other partners, whether they're statutory or voluntary sector, third-party sector, to safeguard them and to give children the best possible start in life.
It would be wonderful to think that on this island, children are really well safeguarded from harm. I imagine, though, that isn't always the case. What sort of safeguarding issues specifically do you come up against?
It really is quite broad. So in terms of harm to children, I mean, my colleague John will talk a little bit more around the investigation side of some of the offences committed which involve children. However, from a safeguarding side, certainly we see a lot of kids caught up in domestic abuse issues. There's a lot of children who are currently surviving and living in households where domestic abuse is a factor, and that's beyond their control, and it is a worry for us, and I think it's a worry across our partners as well, insofar as trying to break that cycle. Part of that is around educating and raising awareness of domestic abuse and the harm that can cause within a household. But also statistically, and if we look historically, today's victims, be children within domestic violence relationships or domestic abuse relationships, are either tomorrow's victim survivors or tomorrow's perpetrators.
But Inspector Cannell says the police aren't always the best placed organisation to help those in need.
Helping adults a lot of the time relies on consent. And a large part of that is identifying who the most appropriate agency is to work with that person. And that's not always the police. That can be adult social care, adult safeguarding, mental health, or a charity or a third-party sector. And touching on things like self-neglect, which we see in terms of self-neglect being circumstances of which someone lives in, where we would otherwise say that's, they shouldn't be living like that effectively, and they're not looking after themselves or potentially where they live. And a large part of that could come down to their current living circumstances or situation, their financial situation, and what support networks they have in place. So we'll do our very best to safeguard and protect vulnerable people in that regards, but a lot of that is around us working with our partners and engaging our partners who are better placed than we are to provide that support.
Would it be fair to say that that becomes even more difficult when there are compounding sort of interlinked issues? Because we all know at the moment that we're in a housing crisis. There isn't a lot of available accommodation. We're in a cost of living crisis. We're in an energy crisis. All of those things must, for a vulnerable adult, make the whole situation even more difficult. If somebody is vulnerable because they haven't got adequate housing, there isn't an awful lot of choice out of there. So you, as the police, can't fix those issues on your own. So how do you tackle some of those issues that are actually not the individual's fault?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And you're right in everything you say. And certainly from a policing point of view, we don't want to be dealing with people in a criminal justice pathway for elements of vulnerability, which has left them in a situation where potentially they go on to commit crime or commit offences. So really for us, and we have a great relationship with our partners in social care and other partners, it's about engaging our partners to look at to help those people with consent, working with that person to improve their living circumstances.
The Isle of Man government implemented the Domestic Abuse Act in January this year. It means, for the first time, the island has specific laws which target those people committing domestic abuse or domestic violence. Speaking ahead of the legislation coming into place, Inspector Cannell said he expected it to be absolutely huge for the island, and he's been proved right.
We're just over 10 months in now, and the police have investigated over 50 allegations of domestic abuse. So the legislation is being used. It's being used effectively. I think we've had 5 convictions for domestic abuse across the island, and we have the first coercive and controlling behaviour going through in December. That's quite groundbreaking for the island. Nowhere else in the UK have they got that level of domestic abuse legislation. So the message we would say to the public really is that we are here to help you. We have the legislation in place to recognise what you're going through. And if you want some help and support, come to us. If you're not sure, please approach the likes of Victim Support for help and advice, and we'll work closely with them at the point in which they are ready.
However, long-awaited legislation which tackles sexual offending in the form of the Sexual Offences and Obscene Publications Act is still outstanding. The Department of Home Affairs says it's prioritising other legislation ahead of it, and that delay has attracted criticism. Last month, the Isle of Man's High Bailiff James Brooks had to sentence a man who'd sent explicit sexual content to people that he believed were children under powers designed to combat nuisance phone calls. High Bailiff Brooks told the court sentencing the man under the Communications Act meant his sentencing powers were restricted, and leading him to add, "It seems to me the public is much less well protected than it might be." Justice and Home Affairs Minister Jane Paul Wilson has since told Manx Radio she expects the legislation to be in place by the end of 2023. Detective Inspector John Mitchell is responsible for the investigative arm of the PVP and, along with his highly trained officers, deals with the most serious sexual offences committed on the Isle of Man.
I've got a team of specialist investigators that are highly skilled and sort of highly trained in that specific area to investigate these type of offences. Each complainant, we do treat them as absolute individuals. They've all got different needs and different complaints. So certainly, we could be looking at sort of historic offences where the complainant has spent a long time from when offence has happened up until reporting it, and they may have sort of plucked up the courage to come to us and actually report that. The actual investigation side again is geared around that victim. It is very much victim focused, and what outcome they want. I think it's important to stress that every outcome doesn't have to be a court or a conviction outcome, and quite often, we do get complainants that want to tell us what's happened to them. They want it recording, but they don't want to support a prosecution, and that's perfectly fine for them to do that, because obviously it is those people that are going to have to stand up in court and relive that event, and they're as equally as sort of brave to come forward to report that, but equally, they don't have to take it all the way to court, and we do look at other avenues for those people to go down, so we can get some sort of conclusion for them. or some sort of remedy for what's happened to them. And we will support them every step of the way of that, and lean on our partner agencies that we do work closely with. With victim support, we work very closely with victim support, and we can sort of signpost individuals to various areas within sort of government and voluntary organisations to help them deal with what's happened to them.
Since April 2023, all cases of sexual abuse that have gone to court have ended with a successful prosecution following a trial or via guilty pleas. 9 court cases have resulted in 10 offenders receiving a combination of custodial sentences totalling more than 25 years, suspended sentences and various orders restricting freedom. 15 court cases are currently progressing through the criminal justice system, and it's during these court cases that Inspector Mitchell says it's vital that victims are given a voice. In September, one such victim, an 8-year-old child, was given their opportunity in the form of a video victim impact statement. It meant they could tell the court in their own words what had happened to them.
Got to thank the support of the Attorney Generals, from the team that's investigated that offence, the Attorney General that supported that line that we've gone down, and really as well that the court for also supporting that particular case, and it was put in place to really so the victim can actually have a voice in court. Victim impact statements are so the victim can tell the court, this is what's happened to me, and this is what it's caused me throughout my life, and this is how it's affected me. That particular case, it was a young child that potentially wasn't afforded that voice in court. So the courts have thankfully allowed us to do a video impact statement, and that was played in court. So the child didn't have to go to court, didn't have to face people, but the court could actually hear what the child had to say, and all the emotions that go with that. And it was, I think, it was really impactful. I say so. It's one of the sort of first time that's ever been used on the Isle of Man, and I do hope we'll be able to use it again. I don't think it's appropriate for all circumstances, but certainly similar sort of circumstances, particularly this one, it was really well received, and that young victim can now sort of get on with their life, and they've had a voice and taken control really of what's happened to them.
And for those who traverse through the criminal justice system, or for those who choose not to, support is on hand from a variety of island-based agencies, including Victim Support. Lorna Trevethan is the charity's chief executive.
So we work very much in collaboration with not only the police and Sam and John's department, but we also work with other agencies within the government, safeguarding in particular, mental health, social care and general health as well, to make sure that we put the individual at the heart of whatever support they need. So again, it's reiterating what Sam said earlier about what is the most appropriate support for that individual, and also our team and the volunteers understanding what to look out for as well, what's not being said as opposed to what is just being said to them. So looking at the bigger picture, having a holistic view, and then obviously then providing the support that they need. So if they need benefit support, we can go and help them make the appointment, go with them and make sure that they're getting the right support and the right opportunities to get out of situations that they may find themselves in through no fault of their own.
And we've obviously talked at length about the domestic abuse situation. Since this new legislation has been brought in, are you seeing more people come to the service for support, advice, guidance?
We are sometimes first port of call for somebody who is in those situations and they don't necessarily want to report to the police at that point. So we support them, obviously, in the first instance to give them that emotional support. Then we do always encourage them to go to the police. We want people, who are perpetrators to get the right justice, and we want justice for the victim. So we will hold their hand and we'll help them through that process. And then obviously that support doesn't stop just because we hand it over to the police and they do their investigations and we go through the judicial process. Our support doesn't end with that conviction either, because we then have to support them through the release side of things as well. So it's putting in together, like I said before, that holistic support around that individual. It's always centred around that individual. It's not about us or the police or any other agency that we're working with. It's about that individual.
The charity actually acts as a support system for all victims of crime.
Absolutely. It can be any crime. Obviously, we do see over 50% of our cases are domestic abuse or sexual violence. But we do see the lower level stuff. And actually, the other side of the organisation, which people tend to forget about, is actually we provide witness service as well. So we support witnesses through the court process. Going into court can be quite an overwhelming experience, and if you've never been in a court environment, it's quite intimidating knowing how to address the Deemster, how to address where have I got to stand, who have I got to look at, all those things. People don't actually realise we do that side of the work, and that's a real key part of what we do as well, because a witness can be a victim as well, but not necessarily. So we want to make sure that everybody's supported in the right way.
You can find out more about the Isle of Man Children's and Adults Safeguarding Week and find local organisations that provide advice and support by heading to manxradio.com.
Thank you for making it to the end of the Little Manx Radio newscast. You are obviously someone with exquisite taste. May I politely suggest you might want to subscribe to this and a wide range of Manx Radio podcasts at your favourite podcast provider, so our best bits will magically appear on your smartphone. Thank you.